Welcome in and welcome back to my channel. I'm so happy to have you here. In this week's video, I'm going to attempt to paint the largest landscape I ever have in my life. I realize from the intro now that probably seems like I am painting something that's just a giant mural. No, it's a 3-foot by 4-foot canvas, and it was the biggest I've ever tried for a landscape, so I wanted to detail the whole process for you, show you where things went really well, and show you where I had to absolutely restart and where I really doubted myself. Ultimately, I want you to decide at the end, do you actually like the final result? Would you want to paint something similar, or should I completely throw this in the trash? I hope the answer is that you love it. Like with any painting time-lapse, the most satisfying thing is when you're first covering the entirety of the canvas with the underpainting or the base layers, depending on what type of paint you're using. Now, this is really important. They might not have any ounce of this paint actually show through at the end. They might be totally covered, but you need to have a starting point. You need to cover all of the white canvas to really get things going and to start envisioning where the painting is going to go. I wasn't creating paint and storing it. I was making it, using it, finishing it, and then not having it left for the next day. And of course, this took me many, many weeks to accomplish. First, I painted the sky and some of the lake and river, and then I went on to the mountains. And this was the first part where I said, oh my gosh, I totally messed up. These colors are way too icy. The sky was too gray, the mountains looked too snowy. It was not the inviting, warm landscape I thought it was going to be. So, hey, it's paint. I decided I could just start all over. So I painted the sky, not just for the second time. I painted it very many times in this video, fair warning. But one of the biggest changing things was changing the colors of the hills in the background to be more rolling green hills and not these icy mountainous creations, which would have been cool for a different painting. One of the most beautiful things as a painter is seeing your vision start to come to life. Every time I added a hill or a new layer to the canvas, I started to see the depth that I had been envisioning, and it was kind of exhilarating. Nothing was perfect. I had no idea where I was going to place colors or things. I was kind of just doing it as I came to mind, but it was really paying off. And I honestly decided that I needed to keep going to add depth, but there was many parts while painting this where I could have stopped and been completely happy with the result. And you'll see that as we go forward. I think I really painted 3 or 4 paintings over the course of this one quote unquote giant masterpiece that I was trying to create. Adding the color along the grasses on the side of the riverbank or creek really just was so beautiful to watch. It was kind of getting a little bit moody, it was getting some depth and dimension, and I was getting excited. Then I moved on to the water and the waterfall, which is always a very big challenge for me. I think different artists have different skill set and what they can do. I definitely tend to like flowers and plants. That's something I feel a lot more comfortable with. Water isn't something I've painted as much in my time, but yeah, I know a little bit about the physical properties of water. I think the problem that makes it hard is its reflectiveness and getting the right color, because water mimics the sky, but also all of the shading and the colors around it. So how do you take something that's similar in color to what's around it and make it distinct and give it the motion of water? So you'll see I also did this and redid the water quite a few number of times as I added different elements to the painting that made the water need to change in character. Waterfalls are another thing that are quite challenging because the water gets so sheer as it goes over the crest of whatever cliff it's flowing over. And even a giant waterfall really changes in shape. The water tends to look a little bit more white, and at this point I had to decide how grand I wanted the waterfall to be. If it was just going to be a stream, I needed to make it more parsed out. But if it was going to be a bigger, kind of rapid, large waterfall, I needed to make it a little bit quote unquote thicker, and so that's what I tried to do. Even to the end, I'm not sure if I totally like how it turned out, but I wasn't going to change it because it was a little bit finicky and I got it to a place where I felt mostly good about it. While this was a landscape, I wanted to add a little bit of visual interest to show some signs of human life. So I painted a bridge over the waterfall, and I did some cascading steps along this left side of the falls to show that there was maybe a path where humans had been. I like it. It adds a little bit of story. It adds a little bit of mysticalness and intrigue. I didn't put any people in this landscape, but there's signs of human life, and I think that's something that's pretty special. With the bridge and the stairs and some of the shore side done, as well as some more details in the little river, I was getting pretty excited, and I even put a poll on my Instagram to see if I should add any trees or leave it as is, and almost everyone said to just put a single tree or to just keep it as it is and add grasses, but I wasn't quite satisfied. I wanted a lot more depth and dimension. I wanted to add some moodiness and beauty, so against everyone's better judgment, I decided to put not just one, but many trees. To make it look more like a forest, I didn't want to put just one type of trees. I could have just done redwoods and given it a little bit more of a mountainous forest feel. I could have just done other types of trees to make it soft. I wanted to show the diversity and create a real ecosystem in this landscape, which is so funny to think about because yes, it's just a painting, but I wanted it to echo the type of forest that I find inviting and beautiful. And that's where the litter of trees through the middle of the painting started to take shape. And they were a little bit brighter than they needed to be, but most of them were going to be covered up by what I was going to put in the foreground, so I didn't worry about it too much. I don't know if you can tell here, but I did make some mistakes along the way. In the very, very back hills before the front of the lake, I decided to put some like bush-like tree structures to see if it would add to the growing forest, and it just looked awful. It looked like moss, it looked out of place, it didn't make sense, and so later on I had to go and change that, which was awful because trying to color match what I had already done was so hard. In a similar vein to before, I wasn't quite satisfied with the mountains I had done in the background. They just felt a little too flat to me. They weren't fading out into the distance enough. One thing you'll notice is there's a bit of atmospheric haze the farther away you get from something. So if you're standing somewhere and there's a mountain miles and miles and miles away, it'll appear a little bit more blurry than a hill right next to you. And attempting to get that haze can be challenging because you have to almost filter in a little bit of the sky color to blur things out. Now, it doesn't mean you're not using sharp lines, but it means that as things move further and further back, they might get a little bit grayer, a little bit bluer, and a little bit more blurry. And trying to fine tune that can be a bit of a challenge. As promised, I was not done with the sky. I just didn't like it. The clouds, it almost looked too much like a computer screensaver. It didn't look realistic enough, and I thought it just didn't have the right color. So I attempted to paint it, and even though I found a color I really quite liked, the problem was I layered too many coats of acrylic paint over each other without giving it time to dry. So the next day when I checked on the painting, it had cracks everywhere. The reality is acrylic is a very adaptable paint. As long as I went back in with a similar color and painted through the cracks, it basically covered the wounds, so to speak. This is where you really need to trust the process, because not only was I potentially ruining this beautiful painting I'd done by putting these popsicle looking trees, any swipe, any wrong brushstroke could mean having to redo an entire section, and that is awful. But I decided to trust the process, and I just dove in and I did some really dark brown tree trunks that were probably way too dark for the space, but it made sense later on, so it was okay. I didn't ruin everything. What did end up happening though is because I put so many trees in the foreground, most of the trees I had done in the middle of the painting kind of got covered up by the end anyway. So another lesson for myself in the future is that sometimes it's okay to leave some of the base layers of the painting. If you plan to do a lot in the foreground, you can keep some of that background atmospheric just blurry and colorful and have it be covered by the trees in the foreground or whatever subject you have. It actually might have saved me a lot of time, but at the same time, I needed to see different areas where I could put foliage, where I could add depth, and it was all part of figuring out this little world I was creating. It wasn't until I put the leaves on the very, very front trees that I started to get so excited. I had done some grains in the bark. I had a special brush that I was using to basically punch the leaves in. If you watch any of the greats, Bob Ross or otherwise, you see they go so slow and they'll take hours and hours. But I tend to be a little bit more impatient. So I like to take a brush and where I can just kind of make a texture, and once I get it to where I like, I replicate it almost everywhere that I need that texture to exist. I know one day I will have the patience and hopefully the skill set to do even better, but at this point, it still looked exactly the way that I wanted it to, and I like to be efficient. Maybe there's a lesson in that too. Adding the shadows to the base of the trees as well as some bushes really made everything make more sense in terms of physics, but also it was more pleasing to the eye. I took away a lot of the harsh lines. I blended things together. I added shadows to the forest. I decided where the sunlight was touching different parts of the bushes and the plants, and so that they were all reflecting in the right direction. And I was getting a little excited. The thing that I was nervous about though was the river. I thought it had too much reflection on it. I thought it was a bit too bright considering how moody the forest was getting. So against better judgment and other advice from others, I decided once again to repaint the river, not once, but twice. The painting had really taken shape. It was completely different than what I had initially sketched. Most of the hills were covered by trees. There was bushes where I hadn't initially intended it. There was just so much difference in color, but it was done and it was beautiful. And while it is no masterpiece in terms of professional work, I was really excited about it because I ultimately had tried to do something that I had never set out to do before. It took some courage because I knew that I could potentially waste weeks and weeks and hours of my time going outside of my comfort zone, but I believe it really paid off. I wouldn't say this is a tutorial per se, but it does kind of give you an insight into my thought process as I paint these type of things and as I attempt to paint items and create art of subjects I've never done before. So if you like this video, I would so appreciate if you could give it a big like and subscribe. It is so helpful and it really allows me to keep making videos for you guys just like this. Let me know in the comments below if you'd liked the art, if you'd actually hang it in your house or not. And stay tuned for another video where I show you exactly where I'm going to put it. Until then, I hope you have a great rest of your day and I will see you in the next one. Bye now.